Hi guys, this is guitarist Denis Taaffe, and it's a wonderful day in March in Bloomington, Indiana. It's still pretty cold though, and basically I'm in the process of cleaning my car. So I'm outside here, and it's kind of a strange way to start a video, but there's a reason for it. Now, when I say I clean my car, I don't mean I just, picked up some papers or things. I mean, I really, really, really cleaned it. And there's a reason why. And I'll show you that here in a second. Well, to make a long story short, basically, I went to a local music store, and they have in the back, they basically have a crap pile. And it's basically equipment that's broken. And I don't know if they have any intention of fixing it or not, most of it not. It becomes like a parts pile. Man, there's cars all over the place here. In any case, so while I was back there digging through stuff, I came across something really interesting. And that's what this video is about. And it's the Fostex VF-160 digital multi-tracker. Now, it looked cool, and I asked them about it. They said, "Oh, it comes up to a blank screen. This is no good." And I thought, man, this is the kind of thing I could probably work on, just from having worked on computers and things. And let me show it to you and tell you all about it. Here it is. There you go. And as you can see right there, it's got 2 rows of 16mm faders, 8 faders per row. Got 16 faders and a master red fader. It's got a jog wheel. Here on the side, it's got a CD burner, little LCD. Back here in the back, so those fader ports, covers, little plastic pieces, they come off. And unfortunately, 2 of them came off on the way home, and were somewhere in my car, I hoped. And I hoped I could find them. So I looked around, didn't find them. So I thought, well, the only thing to do is to do a deep clean of my car, and sure enough, I found both. Lucky for me. Well, so I got the unit home, and I plugged it in, and sure enough, the LCD little display didn't really do anything. And you tried to press play and so on. But just then, I heard a knocking sound. Kind of a real hard knocking, like a tuck, tuck kind of sound. And right then, I knew it was a hard drive was a problem. So, I went ahead and looked at the unit, and on the bottom, it turns out it has a space right there for an IDE hard drive. For an IDE hard drive, which is not the same as the modern SATA hard drives. But this is the old IDE, and in fact it was a 20 gig hard drive. Well, they haven't made those in forever. So I got on eBay and looked around, and I also read up on it. And it could take a bigger drive. So I thought, well, I'll order a 40 gig, and it was about $11 or $12. Then I remembered that a long time ago, I had a box of hard drives that I'd totally forgotten about. I'd loaned them to a friend, and I asked him, hey, do you have a 40 gig? And he goes, well, yeah, you gave me a box of them. And sure enough, he still had them. So take a look at this. There we go. And this is what we need. Right here. Now, this is a 40 gig IDE drive. It's a Western Digital WD-400. And you see there's the old pins and the power connector. And in theory, I should be able to just connect that hard drive and then format it for that particular unit. And the way I do that, it just does it through the built-in operating system that it has. And that's it. That should be running again. Yeah. And from there, now, what I did do is I went online to research the item and see exactly what were we dealing with. And here's what I found out. At the time when this was released, which was probably about maybe 20 years ago, something like that, 15, 20 years ago, this was the only unit that was basically a real built-in multi-track unit that could burn a CD, had a digital mixer, okay, a digital hard drive recorder, and could do mastering and so on and so on. And the actual manual is about 150 pages, if you can believe it. So it's actually a really powerful unit because it can record 16 tracks at one time, which is pretty amazing, really, if you think of it. And a digital mixer, not an analog mixer. And I suppose compared to modern equipment, it's limited to 16-bit 44.1 recording, which is basically CD quality, which is really all I've ever used to begin with. Even today, that's all I use. I don't even mess with the 24-bit or the 96 kilohertz and so on, because you have to dither it down to 16-bit anyway. Anyway, that's a whole other different video. So I'm real excited to see what we can do with this unit. Let's see if we can actually get it running and see what it sounds like. I read some reviews and they said it was pretty amazing. I read one review where they compared it to a professional studio with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a year. right? And this they said that basically you get 90% there with this unit. That's how close they are sound-wise. And at the time, I guess it was revolutionary because the price, the retail price, was $899. Now that's a far cry from the $11 I've invested in it so far for the hard drive. And if all goes well and it actually works, I'm going to try to record an album with it. Let's see how that goes. Should be very interesting. I'm particularly interested to see how it uses more than 2 tracks, all the way up to 16. Now it's got it only has 2 mic preamps built in. So if I plan on using any other mics, I've got to use a XLR mic preamp from a mixer, or I've got a couple of standalone units that can do that as well. Now, of course, I'm a big fan of the roll-in VS digital recorders, and totally stunned at the sound quality of those. And my guess is that this will probably be just as good. Alright, so we'll check it out in part 2. Alright. Hey guys, okay. Now I'm here in my living room, and I got the hard drive installed, and it had originally a 20 gig IDE drive, which is ancient, so I replaced it, and the drive was bad for sure, so I replaced it with a 40 gig Western Digital IDE drive, 7200 RPM. I'm not sure how much of that was actually used, but the machine recognized it immediately, and then unfortunately went through this formatting period and had to format the drive, and that took a long time. However, once it was done, sure enough, we had a working machine again. Fostex VF-160. And I'm very curious to see what kind of quality we can get out of that, you know. I can show it to you here. Here it is. So that is up and running. And you can see here. And I was actually able to, believe it or not, record a track just as a test to make sure it was working. You probably can't see that real well, but if I push play here, there's actually a time stamp. But if you look in this corner here, left-hand corner, right? Hold on. I guess I need to rewind it, you know, at least back to the beginning. If you look, you see that right there? Okay, that's the little recording on a track. It doesn't give you a waveform, it just gives you a little LED bar meter. Good enough, though. Good enough. And that's it. That was my test. Make sure that it played again. And it was pretty simple. Basically, I would hit this record direct right there, and then just choose the over here, which track you want to record to. For example, I could choose that one, or this one, or I suppose down here, one of those two. And then, basically then you have to hit record right here, but that's actually just to set your levels. But to actually record, you've got to, do the record and play at the same time. And then here, this is just playback. And right now I've only got one little track. So anyway, I'm really, really pleased. That's awesome. And to be honest with you, it's just been sitting around. I just never got around to it, but now that it's working, that's really great. I'm very curious to see what kind of sound quality I can get out of this, and if I can actually work my way around it and use it to record an album with. And what I really hope to do is to record everything here and mix it down to 2 tracks, and then just bring those 2 tracks into the computer so I can further, add fades or home mastering type of things. I guess this has, built-in effects and compressor and that kind of thing, but I usually just do that with a computer. And I'll tell you, it reminds me very, very much of the Roland VS recorders. I've been a big fan of those, the Roland VS-890. It's just so simple to use, and I really use it just to record tracks and then bring them in. Now keep in mind that the way that I play and that kind of thing and record is all live in the studio. In other words, I just have mics in front of my amps and just bring those in. And in fact, sometimes I just record to 2 channels, left and right, and that's it. I have things like Sonar and Pro Tools and so on for individual tracks. But for a lot of the stuff I do, I don't need that. I just need left and right, maybe a Sound Forge, that kind of thing. So with this unit, it'll be very interesting, and maybe a real quick way of taking a bunch of tracks, and mixing them down to 2 channels, and there's digital outs on the back. I'll try to use that. I think it would be best. I know that has the ADAT optical out, and I believe I have a card that does have that ADAT in and out. So I'm very pleased. It's kind of nice, to think that this poor machine, at the time, this was state of the art, and it was, $899. That's crazy. And I have about $11 in it, total so far. But I'm really, the next part is to really try it. Now that I know that it works, it's working correctly. Drive is formatted, it's installed. That was really easy, by the way. It was basically a plate, 4 screws, remove the plate, insert the hard drive, plug it in, and you're done. And then formatting the drive, which took a long time. And so I'm going to bring this into my studio room, and hopefully if I have time I'll actually use it tomorrow and see what I can do with it. I think it'd be really, really interesting, you know, and also compare it to a more modern computer interface, you know, into the computer directly instead of this. My guess is that this will actually do just as good a job. Now, I'm guessing. I could be totally wrong, you know, but, you know, I'm a guitarist, so, for example, a lot of the microphones I use are dynamic microphones, okay? So they don't require, you know, super fancy phantom power. By the way, this does have phantom power for condenser mics, but I'm not even using condensers. I'm just using old dynamic mics, you know, and back in the day, you know, you could run into a mixe mixer and use the mic preamps of the mixer direct into the recorder, and you could get fantastic results. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed and seeing, you know, what kind of sound quality I can get. The other thing is ease of use. You know, I mean, remember, this thing, I think, can get very detailed. It's a 150-page manual. However, so far, just for example, the formatting of the driving thing, it seems that the little screen there, while it's tiny, is very intuitive, and it actually gives you hints and questions and tells you, you know, hit, you know, yes or no, basically, yeah? And it guides you pretty well so far. Pretty neat machine so far. Alright, so anyway, we've got a working Fostex VF-160. Hi guys, okay. I'm in my home studio, and you gotta remember I've got like 101 projects going on all at once. It's not that uncommon, but it adds for, you know, you've got equipment set up for this project over here, this project over here, you've got cables all over the place. However, I really wanted to try this Fostex out. Just the idea is really interesting if the sound quality is there. And so I went through and I hooked it up, and I did one recording with it here. And I'm going to show you that right now. Now keep in mind, this is just on the hard disk, okay? No editing, no mastering whatsoever at this point. I mean, this is exactly what I just played in the room, recorded onto the Fostex, using the Fostex mic preamps. And I'll show you that here too. And just so you can see the LEDs, I'm going to turn out this light that I have for the video editing. So let me do that. Okay, now here you go. Here's the Fostex, and there's the two mic cables, and then I've got the two monitor cables going out to my mixer, going out to the monitors, so that we can hear what we're doing. And I recorded 2 tracks right here, real quick, probably noisy, you know, I haven't taken any time at all. I just ran 2 cables, and there's just hundreds of cables in here, so it's real messy. But anyway, let's take a listen to how this came about. I'm just going to play, and there we go. I don't know if you can hear that. I think pretty darn cool. Pretty darn cool. This is 2 tracks, and to think that you've got 16 of these that you can mix together. I suppose you could, the way I am recording, you could run 16 amps if you wanted to. This is really pretty easy to figure out. I think one of the most important things was figuring out how to pan each channel, you know, for stereo, either left or right. And, well, I'll be darned if there's not a pan key right there. So I figured it out pretty easily. Now it's not set up correctly, in the sense that it's not really in my studio at all. In fact, it's on one of my other recorders. And here we've got 2 channels. Yeah. But I'm pretty impressed here. You know? Now, I would think that if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't really use the Fostex built-in mic preamps. I mean, I think they're okay, but I do think that the my Motu mic preamps would sound much better. Gives you that clearness, you know. But that's not really the fault of the recorder, you know. What goes in, you know, goes out. So, totally impressed with the sound. And remember, this is 16-bit, 44.1. Pretty cool. Yeah. Coolness. Now, a couple things I could say about this. And this isn't mastered at all, you know, so it's really pretty cool. Easy to skip around on the hard drive. Now, there, we got the video light back on. It's not permanently installed in my studio, you know. I've got a bunch of different projects going on, including the release of my 308th album, which has been completed and been waiting for me to put it out. And there's all kinds of things I need to do here in my studio room as soon as I find time. However, I think this is a really great unit here, this Fostex, especially with the kind of things that I do, where I record live. When I use the Motu direct, you know, mixed down to 2 tracks, I don't really have the opportunity to do any further mixing after I set the levels. Here, I can set the levels a little better, you know, and hear it back. And I checked, I guess the next step for me to actually be able to use this unit correctly is to discover the digital outs. And I believe it's optical ADAT-IO and that mixes it down to 2 tracks, and then you can bring that into the computer for further editing and mastering. Not bad. I'm very pleased to have rescued this poor little unit, you know, from the shit heap at the music store. You know, these poor items that aren't fixable or just didn't bother being fixed at all. And it's a shame because to me it's very usable. I mean, mastered, I could certainly use this track on an album, and I mean you can hook up all kinds of things, up to 16 tracks. I mean, I don't even have 16 microphones or anything, so that's really great. And for the price these days, it's really great. And I think that's for me, makes things very simple to track it, keep it on the hard drive, and then be able to mix it, the levels, together before I send it to the, to the computer. Now, 2 tracks only here, left and right stereo, is the output of the Fostex. Right? It doesn't have to be that, but that's what I'm going to use it for. Because I don't really use plugins on each track and that kind of thing. For me, I'm more interested in capturing the live sound that I get, the actual sound that I get, as if you were in the room with me, and this is what you hear. I'm not interested. Now, a couple things I can say about this. And this isn't mastered at all, so it's really pretty cool. Easy to skip around on the hard drive. Now, there, we got the video light back on. It's not permanently installed in my studio, I've got a bunch of different projects going on, including the release of my 308th album, which has been completed and been waiting for me to put it out. And there's all kinds of things I need to do here in my studio room as soon as I find time. However, I think this is a really great unit here, this Fostex, especially for the kind of things that I do, where I record live. When I use the Motu Direct, mixed down to 2 tracks, I don't really have the opportunity to do any further mixing after I set the levels. Here, I can set the levels a little better, and hear it back. And I checked, I guess the next step for me to actually be able to use this unit correctly is to discover the digital out, and I believe it's optical ADAT-IO, and that mixes it down to 2 tracks, and then you can bring that into the computer for further editing and mastering. Not bad. I'm very pleased to have rescued this poor little unit, from the shit heap at the music store. These poor items that aren't fixable or just didn't bother being fixed at all. It's a shame because to me it's very usable. I mean, mastered, I could certainly use this track on an album, and I mean you can hook up all kinds of things, up to 16 tracks. I mean, I don't even have 16 microphones or anything, so that's really great. And for the price these days, it's really great. And I think that's for me, makes things very simple to track it, keep it on the hard drive, and then be able to mix it, the levels, together before I send it to the, to the computer. Now, 2 tracks only here, left and right stereo, is the output of the Fostex. Right? It doesn't have to be that, but that's what I'm going to use it for. Because I don't really use plugins on each track and that kind of thing. For me, I'm more interested in capturing the live sound that I get, the actual sound that I get, as if you were in the room with me, and this is what you hear. I'm not interested in manipulating it further, with the exception of bringing up the levels so that it'll play, on regular stereo systems, car stereos, and that kind of thing. Yeah. And as you can hear, it's crystal clear. It's really great. I have no complaints as far as that goes. And I guess the other nice thing, I guess that's the end of it. I'll press stop there. The other thing is, would be really nice is I can do like a little test recording and see the deficiencies, in a line, let's say to the right amplifier, is not loud enough, or there's some noise on the line and that kind of thing. And I couldn't really do that before. So it's going to take a little more experimenting. But I would say if you find one of these, I'd grab it. These are great machines there. Reminds me very much of the Roland VS-890 and the VS, I forget, 1640 or something like that. I forget, one of those two. And the screens are tiny, so they're not very good at editing. That's my cat moving this stuff, trying to make space for himself. What nerve. Hey, stop it. So anyway, it's going to take a lot of work here in my studio room to get all these projects out. But yeah, I'd have no hesitation using this Fostex. I think that sounds great. And for what I do for live recording, it's super because it keeps it, on the hard drive. I have another Roland unit that actually records to a little SD recorder, but it's limited down to, I think, 5 tracks instead of 16. So if you were recording an entire band, I don't recommend editing on it or even using it has built-in effects and that kind of thing. I just skip that and just take the audio into the computer, and then you can use plugins and all that business. But for me, it's going to be the 2-track recording, left and right. Now, if you've got something like Pro Tools or Sonar or what have you, and you want individual tracks, this isn't the kind of machine for that, really. I suppose you could do it. You'd have to play each individual track and record it, and then line it up. That's not what it's designed for. Especially if you want to use a bunch of plugins. It's not designed for that at all. I mean, you can do basically the same kinds of things, but you're much more limited. Obviously, no plugins, just the built-in effects here. But again, since I'm going to be just recording live, for me it's ideal, just as a tracker, tracking, tracking and mixing down to 2 tracks. No other editing than that. I mean, not even a fade in or what have you. Though it can do that, just not quite as well as a computer could. So it's kind of a combination of the two. And the nice thing is, I was worried that it didn't have a digital out, that would be analog. That would have been a deal breaker for me anyway. I want to go, from the recording in, I want to go digital into the PC. And my computer does have a optical ADAT in. It still costs SPDIF, but it's not the RCA jack, it's the optical. And I think this is how this unit operates. So to be able to use that is really great. Alright, well, this has been quite an experience and a lot of fun for me, and really opens up a lot of possibilities, to try different things. I can hook up, some drum machines, or in particular, I'm really interested in combining amps. I've always just recorded with 2 amps, but with the additional tracks and things, it'd be interesting to see what happens, instead of 2 amplifiers, you use 4, or even 5, and it'd be great to be able to pan them within the stereo field and that kind of thing. Now, they wouldn't be on all the time, I don't think. You could switch between the parts. Anyway, that's the kind of thing I've been thinking about for this. Alright, and I guess I should mention, they made a Fostex VF-160EX. Looks about the same, though. I'm not sure what's different about it. I think it may have a USB out or something like that. Not quite sure. Anyway, fun project. Surprised with the sound quality is excellent. For me, if it gets to CD quality, which is just the 16-bit 44.1, that's fine with me. I don't need to go to higher frequencies and then dither down when I burn the CD. Just keep it 16-bit 44.1, simple. And it sounds great. No complaints. So pretty impressed. Now, remember, the manual's 150 pages long, and this thing can do quite a bit. So, I mean, I'm just, just barely, finding just the basics. But at least I've been able to assign inputs and record tracks. And that's the most of what I want to do with it. I don't want to get into too much of it. I guess one thing that's nice is that it has an EQ, 3-band EQ on each channel. If you really needed to clean a track up or something like that, or it was too bassy or what have you. And I really like the idea, though, of this being able to mix all the tracks I've recorded together before sending it to the true track. Because before, there was no reviewing it. You either had it set correctly levels-wise when you're playing and recording, because it goes directly to the 2-track. And once it does that, you cannot change the mix, because it's already mixed down. So this could be really handy for that. as usual, just like on the Roland VS-890, these little LCD screens are just a disaster. I mean, they're puny, you know, little tiny screens. You've got to squint. Now, luckily, this one has a contrast button or knob that you can rotate, and it brings it into focus a little better. But it's still pretty lousy as far as that. But, you know, that's the technology back then. What's amazing is that the sound quality still can be used. That's awesome. Alright, and yeah, pretty easy to get around on this thing. Now I had a 20 gig hard drive and I put a 40 gig in, which is recognizing just fine. I don't know how much time that'll give me recording wise. If I'm guessing, probably quite a bit. You know, I mean, I'm thinking hours of recording. We'll see, though. So, yeah, so there it is. Not bad, I think. Yeah, and this is what it sounded like when I was playing it. You know, just as a test. Just ran the microphone cables into the recorder and that's it. I guess I set the levels, you know, make sure they weren't distorting or anything. Pretty nice. Alright, see you next time. Bye. Oh, hey, I forgot one thing. This recorder, unlike a lot of the Rolands and Akais and so on, where they use compression, right? Kind of like a mini disc compared to a lossless wave file, you know, where they cut some parts of it, and it affects the sound quality. And this one, the Fostex, is totally uncompressed, right? So, no compression scheme of any kind on the playback and recording. That's probably why it sounds so good. Alright, see you. Bye.